Now, I want you to imagine standing on a hill overlooking Jerusalem. The sky is silent, but your heart is not. Below, you can see the temple gleaming in the sun, a symbol of God's presence, which was Israel's pride. But then you hear the wind shift in your spirit. You knew that something is coming because you're feeling this, you're hearing and feeling this unmistakable tremor, and you know that something is coming. If we go through the Bible, we'll see that the prophets had been warning about something coming. They said that the earth would tremble, the heavens would shake, and now at this moment, it begins. I want to welcome you back to GodTalk360. I am your host, Ige Adeyanju, and this is the second part of my series, The Shakings. See, in our last episode, I set the stage. I talked about what shaking is. And shaking is these are the divine interruptions, cosmic and personal reckoning, the fire that refines and the storm that exposes. Today, I want us to dig deeper into the foundations of shakings. Because before you can recognize a shaking, you need to know what God said about it and what he did about it first. So let's begin where everything begins for the people of God, the prophets. In the pages of the book of Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, you will notice that shaking was not metaphorical. It was real. It was terrifying. It was holy. In Isaiah, for example, who is known as a royal prophet, he delivers this divine decree. When we go to Isaiah chapter 13, verse 13, he says, "Therefore I will make the heavens tremble, and the earth will shake from its place at the wrath of the Lord Almighty." See, here Isaiah was making a prophetic sentence over Babylon, the word power of its day. And that's what Babylon was. And guess what? This prophetic sentence over Babylon happened. In 539 BC, Babylon fell overnight. This was an empire that seemed indestructible. It was brought low. It was brought to rubble. Now, why? Why did this happen? Well, it was because it stood against the God of heaven. Now, when we move away from Isaiah and go to Jeremiah, Jeremiah actually is known as a weeping prophet, and he paints a more global picture of this shaking. In Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 32, he declares, "Look, disaster is spreading from nation to nation. A mighty storm is rising from the ends of the earth." And just as Jeremiah warned, Judah fell. The Babylonians came. Jerusalem burned. God's people were carried off into exile. Not because he abandoned them, not because God abandoned them, but because he was trying to shake them awake. And then we'll go to Ezekiel. Ezekiel was the prophet of visions and vivid images. And in Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 19 to 20, God speaks through him. He said, "There shall be a great earthquake. All people on the face of the earth will tremble at my presence." This is what God was saying through Ezekiel. The prophets were not just, warning about natural disasters. They were proclaiming divine disruption. They were prophesying about divine disruption. Now, it was Jerusalem's destruction that was being proclaimed here. The temple in ruins. It was more than just a political experience. It was spiritual. God was breaking what had become hollow. He was shaking the visible to reveal the invisible. You see, shaking goes beyond the crumbling walls. It's about cracked hearts. It's about God refusing to let his people stay comfortable in their rebellion. Now, if you fast forward several hundred years, you'll see that the shaking doesn't stop because now God himself is on the scene, walking dusty roads, healing broken bodies, and confronting dead religion. In Matthew chapter 24, Jesus lays it out plainly. He said, there will be famines and earthquakes. These are the beginning of birth pains. Birth pains. Now, notice the word birth pains. He wasn't talking about random chaos. He's talking about purposeful pressure, pain that leads to something new. And it's not just the earth that trembles. Jesus warns in verse 10 of Matthew chapter 24. He says, many will turn away from the faith and betray each other. There will be a spiritual shaking, a falling away, if you will. False prophets, warfare, deception, hearts exposed, and faith tested, just like Peter's faith was tested. But this will be on a greater level. See, the same warning repeats itself in Mark chapter 13. It says, nations will rise against nation. These are the beginning of birth pains. See, if you take a moment to look around right now, you'll see that it's the slow tremor. And this is already happening under our feet. This slow tremor. It's building up to a crescendo. It's building up to a climax. Then again, we arrive at Revelation. So if the prophet were the thunder, Revelation is the lightning that strikes the earth. John, who was the last living apostle, now in exile on an island in Patmos, when he received this vision, he said that he saw seals, trumpets, bowls, plagues, beasts. And with all this vision, in the middle of all this vision, a shaking took place. If you go to Revelation chapter 6, verse 12, it describes this vividly. It says, there was a great earthquake. The sun turned black. The moon became like blood. Here we see God pulling down a curtain on a world that refused him. And the shaking is both cosmic at this point in time. It was both cosmic and complete. Now, if we go further into Revelation chapter 16 and take a look at verses 18 to 20, it reads, there came flashes of lightning, rumblings, and a severe earthquake. No earthquake like it has ever occurred. No earthquake like it has ever occurred. And yet, even here, in the thick of judgment, God is still extending his mercy. Because after the shaking, after the fire, after the collapse, John sees another vision in Revelation chapter 21, verse 1. It says, then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. Remember, Jesus Christ says it will be the beginning of birth pains. And this kind of pain are purposeful pressure that brings about something new. So after all the shaking, after the earthquake, after the fire, after the collapse, John says, I saw a new heaven and a new earth. There is hope beyond the shaking. There is redemption beyond the rubble. See, can you see the pattern already? There is this pattern that is becoming clearer. From Isaiah to Revelation, from ancient Babylon to the end of the age, the message is consistent. God shakes and will continue to shake what is shakeable so that only what is eternal remains. He tears down false securities, man-made idols, and religious facades. Not because he wants to destroy you, but because he wants to rebuild you from the ground up on a kingdom that cannot be shaken. That is the reason why these shakings occur. So let me ask you, what are you building your life on? So let me ask you, what are you building your life on? When the next shaking comes, whether it's global or personal, will you still be standing? Because here's the truth. The shaking is not God's cruelty. No, it's his call. He's calling for your attention. He's calling you to return, to surrender, to trust in what lasts. That is what this shaking is doing. That is why God is shaking things up. And it's beginning to happen. And it will continue to get stronger and stronger until it reaches that climax. Well, thank you for joining me today. In the next episode, I want us to explore some large scale and global shaking. And of course, one of them is the global flood. But I want us to explore this and what it means when God separates the wheat from the chaff, even within his own house. So that's what we'll be focusing on in the next episode. Well, I hope you won't miss it. And if you've missed the previous episode, I will encourage you to go back and listen to it and share your comment and give me your feedback. And if you have any question, don't hesitate to ask. So thank you very much for joining me today. And until next time, remain blessed.